All right, and we are live. Welcome, everyone, to episode 30 of Narrations and Lamentations with Mittierim and the Boys. I am your host, Mittierim, and with me, as always, are the boys, Skip and Michael. How you doing tonight, fellas?
How you doing?
I'm always doing good.
All right, both of you never do that again.
But then what use would we be?
I've been asking myself that for 30 episodes now. Set them up. I gotta knock them down. All right, so tonight's episode is going to be about scenarios and missions in Warhammer 8th Edition. So we've got some thoughts on this and a heck of a lot of questions tonight. So before we get on to that, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what everybody's got on their hobby table. What are you fellas working on? Not all at once,
Deepwood
though.
Scouts.
How's
Silverhelm.
the Wood Elves coming? How close are you to your 1,000 points to make them runnable?
Well, I have them in-house. Now, painting them is a different story, but I think by the time we start the official campaign, I'll have everything in.
Okay. And Michael, you're working on more Silverhelms?
Yep, well, I'm still stuck on one of them. I'm trying to get the greens and reds right on them. It's a hassle.
You're not doing a Christmas army again like you did with your dwarves, are you?
I really don't care at this point. It looks good.
For those who haven't caught it on one of the various videos, Michael did, what was it, about half your dwarf army in reds and greens before he realized they all look like little Christmas Santas.
Yeah.
And so he had to repaint the whole army.
Well, it didn't help that they were bearded and most of them had white beards. It was like, oh, I've made a mistake.
Oh!
Yeah.
Missed it by that much.
So I have actually not had any chance to do any painting since, pretty much since Monday when we did our show for the end of Brawler's Bash. So I still have my Slan and his chair sitting on my desk, not done. It's just been a crazy week at work, so I haven't gotten a chance to, but I'm really like chomping at the bit to go ahead and get that bad boy knocked out, and then I think I'll go back to doing more core. I've got everything up to 1,000 points painted, but I figure I might as well get a start on the rest of it before we actually get started. So that's it for painting time. We'll go ahead and get into the meat of our topic for tonight, which again is scenarios and missions. Now, if you have been paying any attention at all to the Warhammer YouTubers and the various posters they're on, there's been a lot of buzz in the community right now about scenarios and about whether 8th is lacking in scenarios, whether scenarios are good and bad, and kind of to what extent they should impact the game. So I guess for the first question I'll ask, just to kind of get a feeling from you fellas, what are your general feelings about scenarios? Do you think playing straight battle line is boring? Do you think the scenarios add something to the game? Do you think they're necessary? Or what's your general thoughts?
Well, I definitely think that they add to the game. I think if you sit there and play straight battle line all the time, you're going to get bored of it.
Okay. Michael, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with Skip on it. It definitely adds to the game. You just playing battle line all the time, or hey, I'm gonna sit down and we're gonna just move across the table. That's dull. I'd play that 2-3 times and be done with it. Like, all right, I just wasted $500 to push models across the board. I like the idea of adding something to do in the game.
Mm-hmm. Well, my I guess my issue with it is I think it can add something to the game. My big concern and where I think you have to be careful about it is that you have to hit this nice balance of adding to the game without overcomplicating it. Because I think this is a very complicated game as it is, and if you're going to hand me 2 pages of rules for the scenario that I have to remember in addition to the general game rules, my specific army rules, your specific army rules, and all just sort of the and I know for us, like the magical terrain and everything, there's a lot to remember, and it's pretty easy to forget. What in the heck? Michael, stop moving your computer. You're making like a horrendous noise.
Sorry.
But I'm sorry, Skip. What were you going to say before I interrupted with that?
I think there definitely needs to be a balance. I mean, you have to think about it as speaking as a young player. You know, I'm still trying to learn the main rules, and then you throw, well, only one unit can touch this in a specific turn, and blah blah blah. But at the other side of the coin is you want to do things like that to spice things up. Especially the way that we do things in a more narrative sense, it makes more sense for us to use different type of scenarios than maybe you'll see in a tournament.
Okay. So I guess the next obvious question, we all seem to think that scenarios can add something to the game. I guess the next question is, how well do the ones that are included in the BRB, the 6 scenarios that are presented as part of the rules, how well does that hit that benchmark of adding to the game without overcomplicating it?
See, I know there's Battle for the Past.
There's Battle for the Past, Dawn Attack, Meeting Engagement. Was it? Okay. There's Watchtower and Battle Line.
Mm-hmm.
And I might be forgetting. And Blood and Glory. That's
Blood
the
and
other
Glory.
one we're forgetting.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, Blood and Glory and Watchtower are probably my 2 favorites for scenario, just because they add a specific mission objective. Whereas Dawn Attack and Battle for the Past are basically just battle line, but you change the table up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Skip?
I think depending on the army that you're using, Watchtower can be very good, but let's say that you're playing Bretonia, you don't have really anybody that can hold a Watchtower. You know, I guess it depends on what army and what build you're using, whether a Watchtower will be an asset to you or a hindrance when it comes to scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Michael on Blood and Glory, though. I think that's a good, different vibe to a game. So I think that they hit both of those really on the mark when it comes to changing things up a little bit, but you still have to be careful with what army that you have.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I guess I'm gonna half-ass agree with you guys. I like Watchtower for a lot of the reasons that you guys have stated. Although I think it could be better were it more open. For instance, requiring it to be a Watchtower does preclude certain armies like Bretonia from meaningfully participating. But what if you did it like Watchtower, except instead of using a tower, you used a hill and turned it into a King of the Hill situation? So everybody can get on hills, so it's an even play. But I think the core concept is sound.
Mm-hmm.
The one I don't like as much as you guys apparently do is Blood and Glory. For the reason that every Blood and Glory game I've played has come down to a Death Star. You put just enough fortitude in one unit so that you can't break, and who gives a crap about the rest of the army? Now, that being said, Naren Zaid this week posted a rundown of I believe it was Crossroads scenarios, and they're doing a Blood and Glory game, except it's slightly modified, and I think this is an awesome modification. It says that if at any time during the game all of your remaining fortitude is in a single unit, you are considered to have broken. Doesn't matter how much fortitude's in there, if it's all in one unit, you're done. So it forces you to spread out and have those smaller units and play how I think Blood and Glory was intended to play.
Well,
now, go ahead, Skip.
No, I'm about to say, with us, in our unique little world, that's what we would do. I mean, none of us really run cheesy lists like that. But I could see in a tournament situation where that could be, put all your eggs in one basket scenario.
Well, I don't even know that it's so much doing it because of cheesiness. I mean, if you look at it, let's say you're playing a 2,500 point game. Okay? Your break point on that is 3. So you have one unit with a banner, and you just happen to put your BSB and your general in it. That's 4 fortitude. You then can't lose the game without that one unit being destroyed, and that's all it comes down to. And so I don't really think it adds much to the game. And I don't think you have to be cheesy to have that, or even sort of beardy to have that situation come up, because it's very easy. That's why I thought the rules that Crossroads are doing for it is so awesome, because it's like, okay, we're going to specifically put in the rules where you have to pay attention to not do that. You have to spread stuff around. Which I think in and of it... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was about to say, most people are going to look at it, and I hate to use this term, but rules lawyer it, and say, well, this is what it is. This is how you're supposed to play it. And that's kind of the list that I was referring to. The people who are die hard, we got to follow the rules by the exact words. So, you guys now have more tournament experience than I do. So, and I'm sure that you saw more things than I've had access to.
Perhaps a little bit. So here's the other question. I know none of us mentioned, I think it's Dawn Attack with the random deployment. What do you guys think of that? Is that something that you feel adds to a scenario, or is it something that just is a complication needlessly?
I think it's a needless complication. It's nice to have a new rule in there, but going, oh, well, half my army showed up and the other half didn't, whereas your opponent goes, my entire army showed up, means first turn, you're screwed.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the counter-argument to that. The counter-argument you always hear is war isn't fair. Sometimes the general has to put up with his supply lines being shit and having to go into battle with less than a perfect situation. Does that not test the true mettle of the general in question to be at that initial deficit?
I would say that we are in a game where both sides should be equally matched instead of we're in an actual war situation. Because in an actual war, things happen like that. But we're playing a game where if, say, one player brought high elves, the other player brought dwarves, and the dwarf player doesn't have any of his war machines show up, and the high elf player has nothing but cav, and it all shows up, that dwarf player's screwed automatically.
All right, so let me throw that the other way around. Let's say we're playing in just a normal battle line game, and you've got your dwarves with your half dozen war machines, and I've got nothing but grounder characters, no range whatsoever. I mean, should that game not be okay because we don't have an even footing?
That game's okay because we both brought equal points, and we're both putting it on the table. That's the difference in army building and having your army not show up. As if I make a terrible dwarf list, I've got no one to blame but myself.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you this then, and I think this actually gets into one of the questions. We got so many questions. I'll go through them and we'll find out which one that I'm answering now. What about the scenarios, for instance, like the ones that have come out in the recent End Time stuff, or the one out of the Great Big Red Rulebook that's the Last Stand, where it's
Oh, God.
specifically set up where one side is at a disadvantage because that's what you're trying to represent there. What are your thoughts on a scenario like that?
Those I'm okay with. Those are fluff based, where
Mhm.
I've only come to the table. I've only got these last few remaining guys with me. It's supposed to basically be a loose situation for you. I mean, the Big Red Rulebook one where you've got a third of your opponent's points and they just keep bringing models on. There's no
Right.
army that's truly going to stand against that.
So you're saying it's okay if it fits the fluff of the scenario? Is that what I'm
Yeah,
hearing?
if it fits the fluff of the scenario, it's okay. If it's, oh,
Well
we're
then,
just playing a random dawn attack.
let me ask that: how does Dawn Attack not do that? Because the fluff of Dawn Attack is that you're basically you came upon each other unready. Your supply lines are stretched out, essentially, or is it? It might be meeting engagement, whichever one we're actually talking about. I can't remember. Um, it fits the. I think it fits the fluff, even though the mechanic that they use for it is random.
I don't like the idea of my dice having, of me not having control over where I put my army. In Last Stand, you build a 1,000-point list against a 3,000-point list. You choose what goes in that 1,000 points.
I guess I don't know. I like the idea. I think it's so easy to make these sort of synergistic lists that if you're allowed to sort of play them, put everything exactly where you want to and play them, they become easy. I think it's interesting to be forced to deal with situations that you weren't 100% prepared for, like playing in the one where you have to divide things up and you've got half of your army on one side of the table, half of the army on the other, or you're playing the Dawn Attack and your general doesn't show up, or something crazy like that. I think there's some benefit and some fun to be had in those kind of games. Do you disagree to that?
I think they can be fun. I'm disagreeing with the fact that I enjoy it.
Oh, okay.
More to the point that I don't think they're bad scenarios. It's more that having the thought of, oh, well, most of my army didn't show up, but your entire army showed up. Like if it were balanced out to where both armies, half of them showed up, half of them didn't, I would be perfectly alright with that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get the moment when your opponent's entire army shows up and half of yours doesn't, then it becomes one-sided.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's say, for example, I'm playing a Wood Elf list that has some of my core are ambushers. So let's say I just put up 1 unit of Eternal Guard, and I have 4 units of ambushing Blade Riders. You know, I'm going in with just one thing on the board and hoping something else will come in. That's the way I kind of look at Dawn Attack. You have to prepare for something like that. You know, if you're going in preparing, knowing this is Dawn Attack, knowing this could happen, I think you could still have fun with it. And being one of the ones who have been screwed by Dawn Attack before more than once, I've still enjoyed those battles.
Well, I think what you're talking about, like I absolutely agree with the point you're making, Skip, but I think there's a difference in those two circumstances. In that if you are one of those kind of players with a Wood Elf army that is bringing nothing but ambushing core to the army, you know that ahead of time. You're prepared for it. You've got it built into your army list. I think what Michael is complaining about is the element of randomness there that he's not a fan of. Am I reading you right?
Yeah, no. If I had the choice to take ambushing core, yeah, I would definitely be like, oh yeah, Dawn Attack, who cares? But I mean, I don't have ambushing core. I have ambushing special that are expensive as hell, or
Right.
ambushing rare that are expensive as hell.
All right, well, it definitely seems like we've got some different ideas. So let me ask probably the big question that's going to get us another minute or two of silence. What is a good scenario? What do you look for in a scenario where you're like, man, that's awesome? What makes it a good one stand out?
It's fair for both players. You have equal chances to get the mission parameters and equally have a chance to win. And it makes sense with what you're doing with your armies or what you're doing with their narrative in our case. Those are the 3 things I would look for.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that, Skip.
I'm actually going to disagree, Skip. I don't find the need for both players to equally have a chance to win to be a necessary part of a good scenario. I'm going to change that a little, and I'm going to say I think both players should have an equal chance to participate in the game. Now, and by that I mean it's not something that's instantaneous, like as soon as you set the models down on the table, one side loses. Like if you're playing a Blood and Glory scenario with somebody who didn't know they needed fortitude. That sort of thing. But like, I think you can play a scenario that is an uphill battle for one or the other of the players and still have it be interesting. I think for me, more than any of those, is that the scenario allows for a compelling story to be told. I think the idea of an uneven match sometimes can be very interesting. I still want to play the Last Stand and be the losers on that one, because I think it could be a very, very fun type of scenario, even though, Michael, you and I have already talked about there is zero chance for the losing team on that, for the defenders to win that scenario. It's just mathematically is not going to happen.
You do remember our test games with it when we ran it like 5 times in like 30 minutes?
I absolutely do, but again, I think it's one of those. I think it could be fun with the right army. Like part of me wants to do it with my warriors. Like just have warriors hold up in this old like jacked up castle and have to defend themselves. Like that's could be cool to me. So I think that has the opportunity to be a good scenario without necessarily being equal. Or for instance, and this will be a little spoiler to one of the games we've got coming up, in the Battle of the Pass we're setting up for the final end of the game, it's going to be uneven. One of the armies is going to have 2,500 points, the other army is only going to have 2,000. That's uneven. That gives a greater chance for the 2,500 point army to win. Does that instantly make that scenario not a good one?
No, and I think that's me and Skip's big point, is that is a fluff scenario. It's a scenario to continue to fluff, whereas we're just talking about a casual we throw down the table and we're gonna throw models at each other. We like those matches being fair, or at least I do. Whereas if it's a scenario, I have no problem with it being one-sided, because a good story doesn't just have constant equal battles. Everybody's always equal. It has sometimes where the good guys and the bad guys overwhelm their opponent.
I guess that's a difference. I never look at playing this game without at very least telling a story in my head. So the idea for me is that it's all narrative. There's narration going on everywhere, so it doesn't matter to me if I'm sitting down to play you guys over a beer and pretzels game, or we're doing the last game in the narrative. For me, I'm telling the story anyway. I'd rather have a scenario that gives some power to that's going on in my head.
Yeah, I wish I were you with that. I wish I could make a narrative with it all the time. But when dwarves fight dwarves, I don't know how to make a narrative out of that.
There is only one Fluff Master, my friend, and I still hold the title, I think. But so my take on it is, that's the big thing you need for a good scenario. Is it needs to tell a compelling narrative. And number 2, it needs to change how you win. And I think that's the big sticking point with why the scenarios in the Big Red Book, at least the 6 that you're supposed to roll through, don't work. Because with the exception of Blood and Glory and Watchtower, at the end of the day, the other 4 all come down to victory points. They do nothing to change how you win the game. And I think that's because, I mean, if we're just going to total up victory points at the end anyway, why not play Battle Line? It's simpler.
Yeah.
That's why I like when we branch out, I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about that here in a minute. But we've branched out to some of the other scenarios in the Big Red Book, the narrative battles, that have been very, very entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And you absolutely read my mind, Skip. That is actually exactly where I was going next. So that being said, let's go ahead. Before we get onto that, we are getting some comments. Let's go ahead and touch base with our viewers here. Mystic on the Hill says that he likes my thinking. So excellent. It's glad to see that we have another intelligent viewer joining us. Thank you, Mystic on the Hill. Let's see. I probably should do these in like time order. Okay. So Nicholas Belair pops up, says the book scenarios generally don't meet the criteria of missions except for Watchtower and Blood and Glory. Why? Because they're the only two that actually change the victory conditions. Wow, that sounds like an echo. So obviously, Nicholas, I'm completely 100% on with you that way. And he does make the idea that with Blood and Glory and Death Stars, that the max fortitude in one unit is 4, but Death Magic or another snipe ability can pull that out of the unit. Yeah, that is, but it's still... I think for me it still comes down to the idea that one unit becomes the idea of import, and it's not sort of conquering and taking the flags of different units, which is what, in my mind, the Blood and Glory narrative is trying to be. Because, I mean, if it's just go in there and kill all their characters in the big unit, yeah, duh. Not meaning to put too fine a point on it, but I don't think that changes the narrative. So Vince, hey Vince, he says he thinks there's no more divisive subject with scenarios than the tolerance for randomness in the army setup and deployment. For some, I think it's a new challenge. For some, it's an annoyance that gets in the way that they want to play, and they see it as destructive to the work they put in making their army. Yeah, I think that's kind of the line that we're falling on it. Right, fellas?
Yeah.
Yeah. But what does he know? He's a Skaven player. He loves randomness.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't, because I tell you he doesn't, because you randomize that deployment for those Skaven and you put half his army outside the leadership bubble, they stop liking that shit in a hurry.
Yeah.
And then he also says that for him, he thinks a good scenario is something that makes you think and play differently. Terrain issues, alternate win conditions, different but not necessarily random deployments, etc. And we are actually going to get into the terrain issues a little bit later, but that is definitely one of the things that I think comes in on it. So that was all the comments we got so far. So let me put forth to this to you guys. I think, with the one exception of like the multi-part game where you defend the town as it's destroyed, we've played all of the other scenarios in the extended Big Red Book. I think we can all agree that those scenarios certainly differ from the Big Six. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. What do you guys think is the biggest point in which they differ, and do you have a favorite?
Well, my favorite, even though I got my butt whipped at it, was Invasion.
And, you know, I think that one definitely fits my criteria for a good mission. It tells one hell of a narrative. The fact that you only get victory points for holding the scenarios is solid. I think really the only thing that makes that one less than perfect is the whole you get an infinite number of core units if you're the attacker.
Unless you don't take a lot of core. I mean, you know. Well, what stupid idiot would do that, right?
Yeah. You guys are probably glad we haven't done it where I've been the assaulting force. Could you imagine just an infinite number of Iron Gut units pouring out of that damn boat?
No.
It'd be a bad day for the defenders. Let's just say that.
I would leave one Iron Gut alive in every unit.
Just
one.
Just so the unit doesn't get destroyed? Nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
See, then I'd have to be clever and not put champions in it so that I still have the banner. And so you have to kill me, or I count as contesting the areas. That's what I'll do. So what about you, Michael? Which one of the ones we've played is your favorite?
Yeah, I have to agree with you guys. Oh, I forgot what it's called already. Um,
Invasion?
yeah, the invasion was probably my favorite, just because if you remove the I get to just re-add core to it, it becomes great.
Mm,
New situation. The attackers and defenders are pretty much equal on everything they're doing. You've got to claim objectives throughout the game. It's one of those that you're not going to win by killing your entire opponent. You're going to win by putting all of your units in their area.
right. And I'll actually have to say, as much as I do like the uh, Invasion one, that's actually not my favorite of the extended Big Red Book ones. Um, and I can't pronounce it, but it's like the Dark Stone of
Dark Monolith?
Yeah, the Dark Monolith.
Yeah.
Um, I like that one because it's flavorful as all hell. B, you only win if you're controlling the area around the monolith, which makes it like a correctly done watchtower, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because you've got a single point on the board you've got to get to, you've got to fight for, you've got to control. And with the spell that you get to cast, if you are the wizard controlling it, it adds a good reason why you want to get in there and mix it up rather than just like ignoring it until the end and then you run one last unit over there and claim it right before the buzzer. So I think that one is probably as close to a perfect freaking scenario as they've done in that book.
And I think it was Michael and I that played that one, didn't we?
Yeah, because it was Beastmen versus Dark Elves.
Yep.
I've played it against one of you. I don't remember which one though. I want to say I played it against you, Michael.
I feel probably. Like but I can't remember what armies we played.
I played Empire. I think it was Empire Beastmen.
It might have been.
But either way, it's fun. I would like to play it more often. It's just one of those that, I mean, we don't, strangely enough for us to be doing this show, we don't do scenarios all that often unless it's directly tied to the narrative. I think mainly just because we forget to do the die roll before we do terrain.
I think what we should do is repurpose the Dark Monolith scenario for more of our games. I mean, it doesn't have to be a Dark Monolith. We can take the spell and just make it a improved watchtower.
I can see that.
Or make it do a different spell.
Well, we could do it like we were talking about. I don't remember when we were talking about this, but we were talking about making use of those end time spells. You could do it that way. Essentially, just like have the monolith be a shuffled pile of the end time spells. If you get the
that would be
during
cool.
the turn, you draw on the dark monolith, flip a card, boom, you can cast that spell.
And the dwarves would just cast the Glockton spell.
Right.
Or oh, look, I'm pooping out Nurgle.
Right. God, you never know. It's wild and crazy magic. You never know what's going to happen. So I guess that comes to the next part of this, because I think you have to sort of talk about these two things together, because I think they're ignored so closely together by so many players that they're kind of the same thing. And that is the magical terrain. Now, I definitely think the magical terrain tries to accomplish a lot of the same goals that the missions do and the scenarios do, in that they're there to add something different, to shake it up, and to make you sort of think on your feet. So here's the question. Do you guys feel the same? Do you like the magical terrain? Do you feel that it can take the place of a mission? Is it enough to spice up just battle line after battle line? Or is it something, again, just overly complicating things?
Well, I'll tell you what, you and I specifically are going to be making more use of it, because with the Lizardmen, you have this, the river ability, in water. With me, I have the woods. So we're going to start utilizing, at least I think I'm planning on it, utilizing more of the woods and everything. So I think that they could, in fact, take the place of the scenarios, especially the way we're doing it, where we can go in and we can basically loot that area and get things out of it as well.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, I saw you throw your hands up. Were you hating on the magical terrain?
I'm not hating on magical terrain. I like magical terrain. I don't think it's enough to replace a mission objective. It's enough to spice up a game, enough to keep you playing. My biggest beef is the fucking River of Light.
I see. My whole thing is, I wonder why light is the only one that got love for that.
Who knows?
Like, we need a river of light. We need a lake of fire. We need. I'd even go with like a forest of beasts. Let's just go crazy with it. And just magic spitting out all the time.
I'm okay with that.
As long as that damn pool isn't around.
That's not fair, man. You gotta. He didn't really like kick his bitchin' about that thing up into high gear until I bought that pool from Black Tower Terrain.
Oh.
It's not fair. I got a beautiful piece of terrain, and now every time we talk about it, you complain.
I can understand why, though. Oh, look, I heal my unit back to full. Yay!
Oh, Skip goes up to it. Nothing. Yay!
No, you got stupidity.
Right.
I
Well,
had that.
Skip, you need to understand that the universe hates you, so it doesn't matter what terrain that we do, you're going to get screwed by it. You just need to accept that as a fact of life, and just man up.
Just remember that next time I put my trebuchets on the table. Okay.
He's gonna wood elf into the woods, and he's gonna try to be one of those forests that beats the shit out of him. He's gonna lose his entire unit.
Yeah. By the way, I'm thinking Friday morning I'm going to have the newest battle report up. You totally need to check that out. It was Skip at his finest. I'll put it that way.
Started out so well.
That's how it always starts.
Yes.
Right. And I agree. I think that there is some spicing up to it. I don't necessarily know that it can replace scenarios, but I definitely think it can be enough to sort of keep the battle line thing interesting. I don't find myself getting worn out or tired about battle line.
Part of what I think we need to do, so all three of us are guilty of this. If we get a piece of terrain we don't like, we're sticking it somewhere that doesn't really affect anything.
Yeah.
I know I'm guilty of it, especially that damn pool. But I think if we start incorporating it a little bit more,
I have been doing my damnedest to put the terrain into play, even when I don't like it. So.
No, I put my rivers over in the corner. 2 pieces of river over in the corner. That's not a deployment area anymore.
Punk. But no, I agree with it. I think it's stupid if we're going to roll on that table anyway, to like hide all the shit we don't like in one corner. A, it makes the map look like crap when I'm doing the battle report. And B, what's the point? I mean, if we're not going to play with the shit, let's just do 2 forests, 2 hills, and a fence, and just do it like the GTs do.
I don't want to do that. I think it's there for us to use. I think it makes it more fun. I think we all. Yeah.
Yeah, we do just need to stop putting them into the corners.
Right. And speaking of which, Nicholas Belair says, terrain and scenarios are typically ignored by GTs because GTs want to minimize randomness because that makes the outcome and who wins seem more legit. I see the point, and I see the point that you're making. I think I'm going to go so far as to call BS on it, though. I think the less randomness in it, the more chance for mediocre players to rise to the top. Because I really think what makes the difference between a mediocre player and a good player is the ability to react to things that you're not expecting. That's why I think I prefer playing with closed lists. So that you have to react to what you don't know. It's not everything is laid out in front of you.
I will agree with you to a certain extent there, Josh. And my only addendum to that is specific army terrain, like Bugman's brew house thing.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't feel like in a tournament would make it a fair match when you go, oh, look, I'm playing dwarves and all my units are unbreakable. Good luck. That I kind of feel like other terrain's fine. Just like the Bretonian house, the house that gives all the chaos guide, everything like mysterious forests and rivers and some of the mysterious magic portals and shit. That I think is okay, but army specific things, I'm okay with them leaving out.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think that's just a side effect of the fact that I think just like everything else in this game, the terrain is not super balanced against each other.
Yeah.
I think there are certain bits of terrain that are incredibly powerful, like the Wizard's Lore Tower, or like you said, Bugman's. Just being able to be like, I'm within 3 inches of this. Now I'm a lore master. Have fun with that.
Now I'm a lore master. No, I'm a lore master for high elf, and now I'm a lore master of everything. I can do all of my spells.
What? Truly evil.
Yeah, but I think if you got rid of some of the more crazy stuff like that, you could still have magic terrain and randomness and have it be a true test of generalship.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Now, and again, maybe that's easy for me to say as a not really tournament player, but for me, I like the idea of just having to deal with X, Y, and Z. Just kind of randomly pop up.
Yeah.
And then Nicholas responds, in a GT of 9 players, you only play 5 of them. They want the game experience to be similar. Like I said, I get it. I understand why the GTs make that choice. It is not a choice that I personally would make, for the stated reasons earlier, and we won't have to get back into that. So I guess here is the last thing we'll kind of touch on a little bit before we get into the questions, is for purposes of campaign play. What do you guys... I know with the campaign we've got coming up now, we're doing a lot more rules-intensive things with this campaign than we did beforehand. In effect, making minor missions and scenarios happen in every game by the ability to loot the various terrain things for magic items, that sort of thing. What are y'all's feelings about those kind of scenarios that can, in fact, have a long-term impact on every subsequent game in the campaign?
I like
well,
it.
again, yeah. Again, it's going to force you, if you're going to continue to play and enjoy it, to become a better general. Because if I know that you have like the armor that gives you the 4 upward save. If I know you have access to that, I don't know where you're putting it, but I know that you have it or have access to it. It would make me strategize a little bit more, a little bit different than if I know you don't have it, like when we're first starting out. Things like that. I think it's going to force us to become better players, and I think it's going to add a new spice to the game that we haven't had before.
I can definitely agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing, and I've been keeping this in the back of my mind, and I wanted to get y'all's opinion on it. When we did the video where we first announced the rule set that we're doing for this scenario, or for this campaign, and we put forth the idea that to earn certain things like the Bretonian virtues and what have you, there are going to have to be missions accomplished that are named by your opponent. that are basically created by your opponent. And somebody, and I'm sorry if you're watching now, and I don't remember who it was, had this sort of little back and forth with me about that, about whether we would make purposely impossible scenario missions for stuff that we didn't want coming into the campaign. What do you guys think about that? Like, let's say we didn't want to see Skip have Killing Blow on his Bretonnians, and would you feel right in making a mission that is impossible to, or maybe not even impossible, just like 90% impossible to accrue to get something like that? Where do you think the line is drawn?
I'm pretty sure none of us would do that, as we're all really good friends, and that's very, very just evil. And I think at the same time, we each of our armies have something in there that neither one of us wants to see come out. I know for you guys don't want to see me have the stubborn bender on the dwarves.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm pretty sure at the same time you wouldn't go, well, to get that, you have to get all the way across the board to my side by turn 2. And that's not going to happen.
Now, actually, I think my mission for something like that would be you have to fail 2 consecutive leadership rolls.
Oh, no. Oh, that's easy to do, but it's heartbreaking. Oh.
I think, depending on what it is, it could be a little more difficult than another. So let's say if I want to pick a sword of the Fear Sword as one of my things, just as an example, I don't think that should be as hard as getting the Bretonnian Killing Blow. You know,
Right.
I think we need to base it on what we're looking at and know that it's not going to be a cakewalk to it, but you don't have to run the full gauntlet either. I think that,
and remember too, with the way the rules are set up, getting your normal magic items is not going to be hard, because it's just you're going to have to get the points and spend it on it. It's more the other rules things, and that was kind of the point I made. Is I made the same, well, we're not going to be dicks about it kind of response. But I agree. I think there is a certain window of difficulty, maybe a tier system of difficulty that could be applied when we're thinking about designing missions, and that can be done without necessarily coming off as a gamey douche.
I fully expect that if I ever decide to go for the Grail Vow, that it'd be difficult, because that's what it is. It's the uppermost vow that a knight could take in Bretonnia. So that needs to be up here more than, picking up a banner. I think it needs to be stacked, more. So it's worth, you earn it. Even if I do win, then I know I've earned it.
Yeah. And that's the kind of the reason I like the idea of these missions, in that it gives us something that's worth accomplishing. But it means, because we're going to set them independently of whether you win or lose the game, it gives you another way to participate in the game, even if it's going badly for you. Which I definitely think is a plus side. So, go ahead, Michael.
Well, then it turns in, because I know all of us don't like losing, but it also turns into one of those, I lost the game, but I succeeded my mission. And I don't know about you guys, but if I succeed that mission, I get that item I wanted, or that upgrade to whatever I wanted. That's a good feeling.
Right. Absolutely. So we'll do one more comment from Nicholas Belair before we go on to our questions. He says, correct in that exceptionally different terrain creates really different play experiences, and a GT is different from a normal game of Warhammer and has different goals. What do you guys think about that statement?
Well, most GTs, from what I'm just reading and what you guys told me, have each game there's a different thing going on. Like, for example, you guys had like the Leprechaun Assassin in one of your games at Brawlers. There's something else going on. So I can kind of see where they're coming from, where they don't want to deviate from that by having that stupid pool, or the monolith, or whatever. That's gonna kind of interfere with what they're trying to accomplish. I could see that. But I think if there wasn't anything like that, if it was just a free for all, I don't see why you couldn't put magical terrain in a tournament.
Mm. Well, I was more meaning, just the statement he says that a GT is different than a normal game of Warhammer and has different goals. I can see the point you're wanting to make, but I don't want to see it, if that makes any sense, Nicholas. I don't think a GT should have different goals. I think to a certain degree that idea can lead to the certain kind of elitism that you can see in other sorts of tournaments I've gone to, not Warhammer up to this point, but the idea that tournament players are a different breed than casual gamers and that sort of thing. And so I don't know. That's a weird thing that I don't know that I can disagree with, but I don't know that I want to wholeheartedly stand behind either.
I don't know. We went to Brawler's Bash against people who are regular tournament goers, and they all seemed like they could be casual gamers too.
Right, but in my mind, I don't see those people holding to that idea that the GT has different goals than a normal game of Warhammer.
I don't see that has different goals either. In Brawler's Bash it was march across the board, kill everything. In a normal game, it's march across the board, kill everything.
Or go through. Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Grand scheme of things.
So, Nicholas. Okay, you know what? Now that he reminds me, it makes sense. Nicholas Belair was the one that had the back and forth with me about whether we were going to be douche nozzles on it. And he says his thought was whether we as players were more about trying to quote unquote win versus making it interesting but essentially doable, which made him wonder if we need the rule. If it gets set up such that they almost sweat get it?
Won't get it?
No, sweat. S-W-E-A-T. I'm not sure what you're trying to say in that last sentence, Nick. But it was him. And apparently Nicholas says, Skip, the basic rules are designed for you to get access to that valve from the get-go, so making it really hard in some ways handicaps you even more. Perhaps, but I think too, Nicholas, the main rules are kind of representing something different than we are in this campaign. I think by the limitations of not having any lords and low-end magic items, and low point costs and only one wizard, I think the whole idea is we're trying to represent smaller, younger, and less experienced units. So being able to just be like, I'm a Grail Knight from the get-go doesn't really play into that narrative.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Am I straight on that, fellas?
Yeah. We're definitely doing a narrative and a fluff campaign, not, we're playing, what was it, Blood in the Badlands?
Yeah. And ultimately, I understand. Yeah, and ultimately, I think we need to understand, too, that we're looking at different things in terms of what we're getting out of these scenarios. All right, and now I've opened up. Now by disagreeing with Nicholas, I've opened up a can of worms because the comments are coming in again. Vince says he thinks Nicholas is dead on, and it could be expressed simply. In a normal game, it looks like this: fun is greater than winning. In a tournament, winning is greater than fun. I absolutely disagree with you on that. It's no different in Magic or any other competitive activity. Yeah, but you know what? I still gotta, I understand the point you're going for, Vince, but I cannot support it. Because I think the shorthand of once you get in a mindset that winning is greater than fun, winning greater than fun equals douche. It is. you get to the point where fun stops meaning anything because you placed winning above it, and that's the part I cannot. And I was very happy in the tournament that we went to that I did not feel that was the case.
Yeah.
With one exception. Okay, one exception, and for those who watched my battle reports, I'll give you the one. You can guess that on your own. I felt that everyone else went out of their way to be having a good time, and it wasn't a matter of winning its MB. So I see the point you're making. I just still can't get behind it.
I would say that I used to play football in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I was never that competitive about it. We got on the field, we played football because we wanted to hit people, and that was the only reason why we could do it.
So for you, violence was greater than winning. Is that what I'm reading?
Violence is much greater than winning.
And then Nicholas says, GT goals is a set 5 games taken in the aggregate to pick an overall winner in a field of 90, not a single game between 2 people. They want those 5 games to be representative of a base okay experience without wild swings and randomness. Not going with tournament players are different. Okay. Maybe he's saying I'm misunderstanding him, which is entirely possible. It's been a long week for me. I may be reading all of this shit out of the side of my mouth, so no offense to anybody if I'm getting your entire point incorrect and going off on a tirade about it. So and then Nicholas is like, I'll let you guys move on. And William Page says he really wishes he lived near us. He would love to be part of our gaming group. Well, you know what, man? I really wish we lived near you for more reasons than just being part of your gaming group. So, Hawaii, I hear, is very nice. But you know what? If you ever find yourself in North Carolina, open invitation to you, William. Just come on down anytime. We'll get our game on. All right, let's go, honey, before we get into this anymore, because we are so running out of time and so way off the billions of questions we have. And I am going to be super sorry. I try to remember who did these questions, and I'm probably not going to get them all right. So, first one I think was Darren, and I don't remember your last name. I'm sorry again. He says, what sort of scenarios would we like to see introduced as one of the standard 6 in the next edition? I would love to see the Dark Monolith introduced as a base scenario. I think that is an amazing scenario, and it does everything right. I would play that on a D6 roll any day of the week.
So are we only able to pick from the Big 6 that's now, or the
No, just if you wanna pull one right out of your ass here on live television, you go right ahead.
The something in treachery, triumph and treachery rules.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see those implemented as a Big 6 rule.
Huh. That would be a little bit harder, I think, because it requires at least 3 players.
Well, no, I'm talking about like a 2-person battle where it's just in that you each get mercenary force.
Oh, okay.
Not based off the gold, but make it to where it's kind of like that, but with mercenary forces. So that, I mean, not only does that give Games Workshop more money because people are going to go out and buy mercenary forces, which means they'll need the book and they'll need the model. I mean, come on, Games Workshop, pay me some money.
You know what? That's not a terrible idea. I really do like those particular rules, so I'd be in support of that being part of the basic game. What about you, Skip?
There's 2 I'd like to see. One of the ones is that forest one we've done before, where somebody has to make it through the forest to win. I think that's pretty cool.
The forest ambush?
Yeah. I think that's pretty cool. And the other one we haven't really mentioned, that Michael will probably hate, is River of Death. We
Of
are
course,
so
it's a river.
we are so scared of rivers that I think that forcing us to use a river will help us overcome that fear.
Nope.
All right, Skip. I will play you every time I play my lizard men against you. We can play River of Death. How about that?
Like I said, I think that the forest one is a lot better.
You're a dirty man.
But you know, I think those are great. I think those are great options too. I mean, it's again, you're trying to hold areas. It changes the rules for how you win. I think it's solid. Absolutely.
Yep.
So here is the second question he asked, and I think you've asked the wrong people for this one. But he says, why do you think that the Watchtower is so... He has a lot of O's in there. Oh, despised.
I can understand that why other people don't like it. Because if I go, oh, well, here's my stubborn horde of 50 hammers, and I go, and now they're in that building. I get anti-shooting defense right there, because you're already at a -2 to hit me. To go in and fight them, it doesn't matter how many you kill. I'm still swinging out 20 attacks.
Mm-hmm. I can see that. How about you, Skip? Thoughts?
I think nobody thinks outside. Maybe some people don't think outside the box on what you can do. If that, for example, if the stubborn dwarves went in there, if you have stone throwers, just sit there and bombard the hell out of them. You know, weaken them down, and then you send in your forces. Again, it's the way that you plan your strategy. But I can see where people maybe overuse that. I don't know. Again, he's asking the wrong people. We love Watchtower.
Yeah. So here's my counter to that. I don't think the Watchtower scenario is bad, and I don't think that's what people hate about it. What I think is the actual problem is that the building rules in Warhammer suck.
Yeah.
I think if the building rules weren't so wonky and rewarding you putting 100 dudes in a small hut and fighting with them, it would be fine. But
Did he freeze?
No, I think he did. Remember that scene in Avengers where Thor and Loki are talking and Iron Man just knocks Thor out right in mid-sentence? That's kind of what just happened.
Yeah. So.
But he says, with submissions and scenarios for tournaments, why not try to copy what 40K does with the cards where it gives you an objective to do? I think that's a brilliant idea. I mean, Brawlers basically did that. They gave you 5 cards at the beginning of the tournament and were like, you have to play with each of these once, and it gives you a scenario plus a special little bonus rule. Mm-hmm. I think for tournaments that's awesome because it adds a little bit of that. What do you mean? A little bit of that. Whatchamacallit? Randomness. Yeah, without necessarily like breaking the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I guess we're getting no argument on that. No. So, apparently the Watchtower thing spawned some comments again too. War General T says Watchtower is terrible for fast cav lists. Dark elves, high elves, wood elves. Yeah, because the elves need bonuses. You know what? I'll cry a river later for the elves. Don't care. Brett's, I will absolutely agree with you. They need some help. But again, I think part of the issue is it's because there's a building on top of it. The basic idea for Watchtower could be applied to anything that doesn't necessarily have to screw cavalry dudes. And then Nicholas says, Watchtower is hated because you can be winning the game solidly and have one unlock turn and lose the game. I can have one model left on the board, and if it's in the tower when the game ends, I win. Absolutely. That's exactly what it should be.
If you didn't pay enough attention to the building, obviously you weren't playing the game.
Right. I mean, you get blinded to the target and you lose. That makes sense to me. I mean, that my whole thought, and I think this was on maybe Skaven and AZ's video. A couple of people did these videos, and the idea is it's a good scenario if you can have one model on the board and still potentially win the game because you did what the scenario said.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to try and make, like, escort quest missions or rescue missions where you've got to get in and get something and get the hell off the board, something like that. Stuff where literally you could destroy my entire army, but if I have the giant pot of MacGuffin and I run off the board with my one dude remaining, I can still win because that's kind of the different story you're trying to tell.
We could rescue the damsel from the watchtower. Yes, I like it.
Oh God, no. No, I've already vetoed it. Too many puns. Too many puns will come.
Just because your dwarves can't walk.
We're movement 3. What do you want from us?
I know. But think about it. Wouldn't, like, an infiltration mission be cool?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I'd totally play the Beastman Ungors there, and I'd win every time.
Right.
Yeah,
but the idea would be is you've got to get in there, get something, and then get off the board.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, that would be a cool mission. And it wouldn't matter if the rest of your army would be beaten, because the idea is they're entirely a distraction for your infiltrator force.
Yeah, I'd totally be down for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think... And maybe the point that you're making is that it's despised by those, like, winning is greater than fun kind of guys because of that reason. But you know what? That's freaking awesome. If I am pimp slapping you across the board and you can still win with your one peasant model that's running like a son of a bitch away from my ogre horde, kudos to you, sir. You win.
that peasant becomes a knight.
Exactly. Okay, so, and I think this first question from Vince we kind of got to a little bit, but let's revisit it for a moment. Is it okay for a scenario to be harder for one army to complete, i.e. moving is harder for dwarves, etc.? And what if there's a scenario later on that's more favorable to that army, I guess in terms of a tournament? So I think for the most part we're split on whether it's okay for a scenario to be harder than one army. Is that correct?
The idea of if it's harder for one army, it should also be harder against an army that has something that can get around that. For instance, I can take dwarves, and yeah, I'm moving 3, but I can also throw Vanguard banners on all my units.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, I've moved in turn 1 15 inches across the board.
Yeah,
which I don't see as a big handicap.
More than that, if you wanted to march, you'd be what, 18 inches across the board?
Yeah, so I'd basically I'd basically almost fly across the board.
Right.
There's a certain gray area where it's okay, I can deal with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, like I said, I think for me, as long as both players can participate, I'm okay with it. I don't think it has to be equal participation, or not even equal chance to win, but I think you both have to have an opportunity to do something of worth in the particular mission. And I think the idea of doing, like, scenario A, like, the first scenario of the game really screws big units, and then scenario 2 might really screw fast units. Stuff like that. I think that's okay, because in a tournament you'll get a better spread. I think you won't ever see something that's that blatant and overt about it, but there's that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Vince says, as far as our last question, honestly, we could just look to Mordheim for this. There's a world of great scenarios, most of which drastically alter the win condition. Retrieval, discovery, rescuers, ambushers, etc. Yes, absolutely. Let's do all of that.
Yeah.
Let's ambush people to rescue them and then retrieve them before they're discovered, right?
That works. I'm okay with that.
I think that's all 4.
Mm-hmm.
No, absolutely. I think anything that mixes it up like that is a win in my book, Vince. So his second question: How much randomness in a scenario is too much? Random deployment, random monsters, random magical events, etc.
I think you can kind of overdo it. I mean, if you're having a scenario where this monolith is shooting out random magic, I don't think you want mountains moving around or something like that. I mean, there's a point where it's fun and there's a point where it's overkill.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a fine line right there that you have to walk, to avoid one way or the other.
I can see that, although I might argue that the line is not quite as fine as you. I think the big divider there is internal randomness versus external randomness. I think you can't cross that line. If you want to do an internal randomness, something like my army deployment is random, that's internal to my army, then you need to play the rest of the game straight. Because you're already upsetting too much on one side of the board. But if you're not messing with the army, the people can deploy like they want. I'm all about bringing on random monsters or random magical effects, as long as those are sort of external to the board and not like jacking up the particular way the units behave any more than like a normal spell would.
Yeah, I can see that.
I can understand that.
So, we got more comments here. Sorry, I'm not meaning to get distracted, but like the comments are just boom, 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 boom. So William Page says he also thinks building an all-fast cav unit is entirely avoidable, or I guess all-fast cav army is entirely avoidable if you know watchtowers in the tournament scenario. I think building a skewed list should have an obvious weakness. The whole cake and eating it too cliche. I absolutely agree.
Mm-hmm.
No comment here. And then Nicholas, not disagreeing with you guys, like I have the entire show. No, we're not. We're just giving you a hard time, Nicholas. Just throwing out alternate views. But for example, most GTs make Blood and Glory give bonus points over auto-ending games because if you drive 5 to 8 hours to play, you don't want to be shortchanged a game because of bad luck and the game ends turn 2. Now that I will absolutely give you. That's actually the biggest point where I think Blood and Glory actually fails because it ends the game early. And it can end the game very early depending upon how things go. I almost think Blood and Glory would be better counting the number of banners captured. I don't know. Maybe not. But
at that, you're looking at somebody who goes, well, I take my BSB and then no banners in my entire army.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe turn it into like a capture the flag thing.
Yeah.
Like have certain areas, like have certain like flagpoles on the battlefield. And if your unit, like, you can take one of your units and you put them near that, if they're within 3 inches of it, you can hoist your standard. And if your standard is hoisted at the end of the game, you get like 2 points for it.
Yeah.
Something like that. Like, that could be cool. But yeah, I definitely agree. Like, that's why nobody in a tournament plays Blood and Glory straight, because that would absolutely suck to get there and I mean, hell, with some armies, you could be like, top of turn 1, I broke you, haha.
Yeah.
Which would just absolutely suck, by the way. So, third question from Vince. One of my big fears with scenarios is complexity. What level of complexity is correct in scenarios from our point of view? And the world gets silent again.
Well, I really don't know how to answer that, because one scenario may have 2 or 3 things in it that are really neat that you want to accomplish, and one scenario could just have 1 and it'd still be fun. I don't think you should overload it with, oh, you got to do this, and then you got to do this, and then you got to go there, and then you got to have that. But I think if it's done in moderation, I really don't know how to answer that.
Right. I think it ultimately comes down to whether the complexity is necessary to accomplish narratively what the scenario is trying to do. And I'll give an example for Brawler's Bash. The second scenario, where it was the nesting dolls of the celebrities, I thought that was overly complicated. It was a normal battle line scenario, but you start off with like this Mel Gibson, or no, who was it? It was Gary Busey.
Yeah,
Gary Busey model in the middle of the table, who basically has the stats of a keeper of secrets, and you could attack it like normal, but if you don't kill it from shooting and magic, then it does this thing, and you have to wait till turn 2 to kill it to get any victory points for it, and blah, blah, blah. So that was complicated enough. But then when you did kill it, you like disengaged from it. It turned into Mel Gibson, who had a totally different stat array, different setup, different rules, and then you would like continue your overrun if you could overrun whatever. And then when that one died, it turned into Tom Cruise, which had another set of rules and scenarios. And it was a cute idea. I just thought it was way too complicated because you had to keep up with 3 different stat arrays for the thing. You had to, it was just too much. So I don't think it was a cute idea, but I think they kind of drowned it in the rules.
I don't remember that scenario. I don't feel like I ever actually got to dolls.
That's because you got tabled by the freaking 3 bloodthirsters.
Oh, my damn cannon.
But I tell you, the way I went about it, for those of you who haven't seen the battle report yet, I let my opponent basically tie himself up, killing Gary Busey and Mel Gibson. And then when he was weakened and it turned into Tom Cruise, I snuck in and stole the Tom Cruise points. So I didn't pay much attention to it because my opponent was getting screwed over by it the whole time. So this one I remember. This one's from Remington Steele. If we had to choose between chili roasted skinks and Kentucky fried rat, what would it be?
A skink, because I am not eating rat. Not Skaven.
I would have to go with Kentucky Fried Rat because I'm a wuss when it comes to spicy things and couldn't handle chili roasted anything. I'm assuming that you mean with like actual chilies and not like the chili you put on a hot dog or something, because those would be 2 very different meals.
Either one of those delicious.
So I'm guessing you're taking the vegetarian option, lightly braised wood elf?
That's right, I had the lasagna.
Slightly braised dryad.
Dryad, right.
Poor dryad.
Yeah. This one might have been Nicholas. I don't know. I'm very sorry. So many questions. I don't keep track of who tells them. But he says, do you think scenarios can really make a big impact without completely rewriting the victory point rules? I think we pretty much agree that they can, but basically by ignoring them. By making them not matter, you can definitely do that. I think at any point where you get... where you just make the scenario rules like number of victory points you earn for X, Y, and Z, you're still not really doing anything. Unless, of course, that you make the thing worth so many victory points that it's more than you could get from killing your opponent's army. And then it's kind of pointless because you could just say, if you do X, you win. Because that's basically what you're saying. You're just putting a point value on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So... Nicholas pops up with another comment. He says he's been playing Malifaux for a bit. He's intrigued by the idea that both players can have different goals. Do you think that can work in fantasy? Kind of goes back to your missions for special vows, magic unlocks, etc. I think so. Mm-hmm. I think you have to kind of keep them similar, though, because there has to be a point for contest. I think if you set your goals as 2 things that can be accomplished simultaneously, then there's no real game because you can just run on your side, do your thing, and Your opponent can do their thing and you never have to fight.
That's it's kind of like the battle in the force where one force is trying to escape and the other force is trying to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
One force is trying to avoid combat, and the other force is trying to obtain combat.
Mm-hmm.
So you're very much different goals, but very similar.
Yeah.
And contest is always there. I think that's
I guess
perfect.
it's different goals, but mutually exclusive goals is the real trick.
Mm.
I don't know. It'd have to be something I would have to sit down and come up with some scenarios to see if I thought it could work in the long term.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Skip.
One thing we haven't really touched base on, and we've been talking about scenarios and terrain and things like that, is weather. I would, for one, would love to get the rules for like a snow battle or a mud battle or something that the weather comes into play. I just think, because not all battles are fought on a bright sunny day.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Well, how about this? How about you write us some battle rules for weather, and we'll start playing with them.
All right. I'll mark that down.
Maybe do it up like a random table or something, and
Is the weather like today?
We'll get it go. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely.
I play that.
Maybe we can do that since we hate putting down the whole freaking fortress or settlement of order or settlement of destruction. We can change those to weather change, and if you roll a 12 or a 2, you then have to roll on the weather table, and it changes the whole board.
That'd be cool. We do that a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
We do roll a lot of 12s and 2s.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, do we?
Yeah.
So cool. Put together a table and some rules for it, and we'll take a post at it. And once we chew on it for a while, we'll post it to the YouTubers in case anybody wants to give it a try in their own home games.
Awesome.
So, last question. Again, I think this one's from Remington Steele. Do you think it's a ploy by GW for the best models and concepts to have the worst rules? I'm talking squig hoppers and razordons.
Let's see. Oh.
Yes-ish.
Are you also talking Slayers? Because they have the greatest models ever and terrible rules.
Yes, and most of the Beastmen rares, which are just amazing looking models and stuff, and they just I would again, this is one of those questions that I would like to say no. I would like to object to this, that no, they couldn't be that evil. But I think it's happened so many times. It's obviously part of their sales strategy that they flip-flop on things, change what's good, just to make models sell. And I think it's just different things have to get good and bad just to sell them. And I think if they were going to stick with that setup, maybe in 9th you'll see squig hoppers and razordons be awesome. And who knows, maybe every rare in the Beastman book will be like Beasts of Nurgle level broken.
Yeah, Gorgon broken.
Yeah, provided arms have a 3-weapon skill instead of 2.
No, they can't have it. That makes them too broken.
No.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm still crying that even my leaders in the ogre army have 6 weapons, 5 skill. I'm like, that's elf core. It just makes me sad.
That's funny.
But yeah, I definitely think that's an active thing that they're doing, or at least up to this point. Either that, or it is the biggest coincidence to ever occur in gamingness. Because it happens pretty much across the board with all their products. Either there's something going on that they're actively doing, or the stars have aligned and it's the biggest coincidence ever. And the likelihood of that happening kind of speaks for itself. So
the truth is out there.
Right. All right, guys. Well, that runs us out of questions and actually runs us almost to our normal run time. So any last thoughts on scenarios, fellas?
I say don't be afraid to use scenarios. I think they will enhance, if you haven't used them before, they will enhance your gameplay. And don't hide the terrain.
And don't drop the soap.
Yeah, and
don't roll the pool.
Make sure you have a talk with your kids at a proper age about using scenarios and terrain so that they're not scared and don't mess it up.
Wow.
This is your brain. This is your brain on scenarios.
Yes, exactly.
I think I totally placed my age with that reference, by the way.
You two just love causing a scene. I know.
Right.
Can't help it.
So, all right, well, we wanted to thank everybody who's watched. We actually had a pretty good viewer run tonight, so thank you guys for keeping up with us. Don't know what next week is going to be. I need to reach out to Nick Vensky and see if he wants to do the rebuttal show for the Beastmen, so that might be next week. If not, I've had some thoughts to do one about discussing the different lores of magic and our thoughts on those. So that may be next week. Just keep a watch on the Warhammer YouTubers page. I will announce what the next show is before the next show starts. Yay. But again, thank you guys for watching, and we've actually finished planning the end of our campaign. The current one we're running, it looks at this point to be within 3 or 4 narrative battle reps to completion. Now, I know we're fitting at least a couple of fun little random stuff in between that, so it's not going to be straight 4 weeks and we're done. But I think it's going to be a fun wrap-up, and definitely keep an eye on the channel to see that. I'm hoping once that's done, I'll get into the new Fluff Masters videos to introduce you guys to our new armies for the new campaign, and we'll be kicking that off probably within the next couple of months. So hopefully, if that's something you guys are interested in, you'll keep an eye out for that. Other than that, it's been a great show, everybody, and we will catch you next week. Bye-bye.